Good evening. What a nice night and a nice crowd, a nice time for a debate. I think even the football gods were with us, it seems, scheduling a Sunday night Patriots game instead of a Monday night Patriots game this week. And what a wonderful venue. This, of course, is the historic and beautiful Colonial Theater. I am Paul Miller. I'm with the Keene Sentinel, and the Sentinel is proud to bring you tonight's debate. Over the years, mayors in this city have played an important role in helping to shape change, in providing forward-thinking vision, and also in being good ambassadors for a community that I know we all hold dear. This year we have two qualified candidates who seek to do all of that and more. And we hope that tonight provides for a vibrant and honest discussion of the views that each candidate brings and what they offer for this position. The format for tonight's debate is really simple and traditional. Questions will be asked in an alternating fashion of each candidate. The candidate to whom the initial question is directed will have 2 minutes to answer that question. The other candidate will then automatically have 1 minute for rebuttal or response, and at my discretion, we can request a 30-second re-rebuttal. The rules that perhaps you should know about, those asking the questions, myself and the panelists, will be allowed to ask follow-up questions if they choose. The only other rule that you might want to be aware of is the candidates have agreed that they will not be directing any questions during this debate toward one another. A three-person panel to my right will do most of the question asking tonight. They are, from my right, Melanie Plenda, a former Sentinel reporter and freelance writer and author with more than 17 years of journalism experience in the region. Nat Stout. Nat is a former journalist and former Sentinel reporter, and as many of you know, a former city councilor. And to my far left, Annika Clark. Annika is a former Sentinel reporter and the current local news editor at our newspaper. I will moderate the debate. The debate will not exceed 90 minutes. If it goes a little bit shorter than that, then that's how it works out. I will ask the questions that have been submitted by Sentinel readers over the course of this past week. And I might add that we're all commercial-free tonight. So, without further delay, let's bring the candidates to the stage. Please welcome with me Mr. Kendall Lane and Mr. Kris Roberts. The candidates will have 2 minutes each for opening remarks. Mr. Roberts won a coin flip prior to the debate and chose to go last in the closing comments section of the debate. A separate coin flip determined the first question of the debate will go to Mr. Roberts. So for opening comments, let's begin with Mr. Roberts. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My leadership philosophy is simple. Identify the problem, acknowledge the problem, solve the problem. I am running for mayor because I understand numbers. I look to numbers to identify possible problems before they become a crisis. Between 1990 and 2014, the Keene population is up 350 people. If you subtract the student growth in Keene State College, the Keene population is down 1,000 people. According to New Hampshire Employment Security, between 23 and 2013, Keene has lost more than 1,250 manufacturing jobs. Keene saw an increase of about 600 service jobs for a loss of about 600 private sector jobs, or about $45 million a year in wages. There are about 11,500 working Keene residents, but only about 2,500 work in Keene. About 7,000 leave every day to go into other New Hampshire communities, and even about 2,000 go out of state to work, while almost 16,000 people come into New Hampshire to work on a daily basis. New Hampshire has the fastest income inequality in the nation. Keene has the fastest growing one in New Hampshire. Keene has a poverty rate twice the state average. About 5,000 residents live on less than 150% of the federal poverty guideline. Up 900 in 2009. Keene has an extremely high tax rate, over $40 million in homes for sale, at least 27 commercial listings, more and more empty apartments. The Keene School District recently lost about 70 more students, or about 500 since I've been on the board. Keene has a number of serious problems and solvable problems. I don't criticize if I'm unwilling to be part of the solution. I wouldn't be running for mayor if I didn't believe that I had the knowledge, experience, and the ability to work with others to make Keene a better place to live for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, 2 minutes for opening comments.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight as we discuss the issues that face the city of Keene for the next 2 years. We also look ahead to our vision and your vision of what the city of Keene will look like in the future. I particularly want to thank Paul Miller and the Keene Sentinel for putting this on, and our panelists for agreeing to serve tonight. I was born and raised in Keene. After high school, I left Keene for 10 years while I went to college. I spent 3 years in the Army and graduated from law school. I lived in Boston for 3 years, and I lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 years. I returned to Keene in 1975, and I've lived and worked here ever since. I love this city. I care a great deal about the future of this city. I share the vision adopted in the community goals of 2008 to see it become the best small city in America by 2028. I've been involved in public service in Keene for 35 years and have been honored to serve as mayor since 2012. There are many issues facing Keene. These include high taxes, the drug addiction crisis, creating a sustainable employment base, infrastructure improvements, housing, and the effects of climate change. I want to continue to work with the citizens of Keene to find long-term solutions to those issues. In addition, there are several ongoing projects that I want to see to completion, including the expansion of the library and the update of the land use codes. Finally, the city will be hiring a new city manager. I want to work with her or him to provide continuity in the city's leadership. As you listen to the responses of the questions this evening, please consider our vision of the future and how we will work together to get you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, the first question of tonight's debate goes to you.
Mr. Roberts, given that the mayor does not have much voting power, how will you stop higher taxes and how will you control city spending?
The mayor has more power than a lot of people realize. The mayor sets up the committees, and the mayor appoints boards and commissions. And one of the things that I've been pushing for 8 years, in November, we will now have a meeting where the city council will get together and set priorities for the city manager before the budget is even set. And for years, basically only the 5 members on the FOP really had input on the budget. And then the final budget was passed in the last week, it was mandatory. And the other city councils, we spent hours arguing over $10,000 for the 100-night shelter or $6,000 for the pumpkin fest, when we should be arguing and looking about what are we going to do in a $60 million budget.
Mr. Lane, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. For those people who follow the city budget closely, members of the Finance Committee, other members of the City Council, the City Council, in fact, has set priorities. 3/4 of the city budget is divided between the police, the fire, and public works. They have set the priorities for this city, and they continue to set the priorities for this city. As we talk about how do we cut the tax rate, the only way to cut the tax rate realistically is to expand the tax base. And I have, during the last 4 years, worked hard to ensure that we, in fact, are able to expand the tax base. We held a forum regarding the East Side redevelopment. We've had continuous negotiations with a number of property owners on the East Side, and we will continue to work to expand that tax base in order to bring the tax rate down.
Could you maybe give some specifics, Mr. Lane, on how you would control city spending?
When you talk about controlling city spending, to be honest, the city of Keene, on a per capita basis, is actually 7th out of the top 16 cities in the country. City spending is actually right where you would expect it to be. If you look at the top 16 cities, we're 11th in population and we're 11th in city spending. Our city spending, in fact, is where it ought to be. The problem is not city spending. The problem is city revenue, that the revenue that comes into the city is inadequate, and our assessed valuation out of the top 16 cities is 13. If that spending, if that tax base was higher, then the tax rate would come down. Because the tax rate is really just a function of the value of the property within the city. And that's really where we need to put our emphasis.
Mr. Roberts, you have 60 seconds of response time if you so choose.
Yes, thank you. I've been up at the State House for the past 10 years, and I gotta be realistic. The money just isn't coming. Up at the State House, we are not going to increase the budget. We're not going to increase money down to the local levels. We can complain and complain and complain about how much money we should be getting, but now we gotta be realistic. We're not going to get $1 million extra a year for the retirement fund. So now we have to realize, what do we have to give up to maintain the quality of life? And if you keep raising taxes, you're going to continue to lose well-paying jobs.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, drug-related deaths across the state are at or are approaching record levels. Recent polls show drug abuse is now seen as the second most important problem plaguing New Hampshire. What role does the mayor have in addressing the heroin opioid crisis gripping our community, and what would you advocate city leaders do? And please be specific.
The mayor has the ability to bring together members of the community and experts in the field to search out solutions and make recommendations. As mayor, I brought together a forum of community leaders, of experts in the field, and of those who, in fact, are directly impacted by the heroin epidemic, and gave them an opportunity to begin a community discussion about how we, in fact, can address that. I also have set up a committee, and in fact, this morning, the committee met for the first time, and in fact, is beginning the process of developing both short-range and long-range solutions to that problem. We are not going to solve it by ourselves, and nobody is ever going to suggest that we have a magic wand that's going to solve it. But here at the local level, we can begin to address support for addicts, how we can provide support services for those who are in recovery, how we can provide support services for those for families of those who have been addicted by heroin. And we can also start working to try to expand the number of beds available. 15 years ago, there was 600 beds available in this region for heroin addicts. There are now only 60 beds. We've lost 90% of the beds that were available in this region. And we need to start working together in order to increase the number of beds that are available.
Mr. Roberts, 1 minute.
Everything the mayor says is good going forward, but I would do two things. One, what I've seen over and over again, nonprofits fight over who's going to get the money. Sometimes they don't care if another nonprofit loses money as long as they get money. The idea is we got to get together, as the mayor is saying, let's work together, let's go out for every grant possible, and then divvy up the grants to who can do the job the best. But another thing, jobs and jobs. 40% of the Medicaid enrollees who are on pain-killing prescriptions have at least one risk factor for abuse and overdose. We gotta get people jobs to lower those risk factors.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, 10 days ago, we marked the 10th anniversary of the 2005 flood, which crippled certain parts of the city. To your view, have enough meaningful flood mitigation steps been taken to prevent a similar result when the next perfect storm hits? And is it time to construct a gated flood control dam near Beaverbrook Falls?
Well, first thing, 10 years ago, I woke up in the morning and I heard the fire engines, and they said, evacuate, evacuate, and I tried to wake up my wife and say evacuate. She thought I was just joking, and then I walked down Grove Street to Water Street, and there's cars were flooding. We have done some work on Beaverbrook. We've done a lot of work on Grove Street. And I can tell you, Grove Street doesn't flood anymore. Willow Street doesn't flood anymore. But somehow reason, Ralston Street in that area floods more now. So you have to have a plan that you just don't fix one and push forward. We're gonna have to come up with a flood control gate. We're gonna have to do something. One of the proposals is to take some, hopefully get some land from the old Kingsbury property, cut that out to allow the water to go in basically the flood control planning instead of going into people's basements.
Mr. Lane, you have a minute.
Thank you. We're subject to climate change. Regardless of what the cause of that climate change may be, it's happening. We are getting more storms, they are more severe, and they are more frequent. Our infrastructure was built for a storm system that existed 50 years ago. We need to update that infrastructure. We need to update the storm drains. We need to update our ability to respond to flooding. We spent over $1 million on the Beaverbrook corridor, and we have mitigated a great deal of the flooding that took place along that corridor in thunderstorms, in smaller storms. But if we get a 100-year storm or a 500-year storm, we're going to have flooding no matter what we do. I've also had meetings with the Corps of Engineers. I've been meeting on a regular basis with the congressional staff to try to get the Corps of Engineers to come in here and do a flood analysis to determine what steps we actually can take that will mitigate the impact of the major storms that we're facing now.
Thank you. And the next question goes to you, Mr. Lane, and I'll read that. This question comes from Keene resident Kathleen O'Donnell, who asks, Mr. Lane, you said in your Sentinel questionnaire, and you've repeated here on stage today, that you are running because you want to see Keene named the best city in America. How would you define that, given that we have an opioid crisis, panhandling issues, that we've lost our signature tourism cultural event? Do you think we are close to that, being the best city in America?
The goal is to make Keene the best city in America by 2028. We have Healthy Monadnock 2020. We have the work that the city is doing to reinvest in the trail system. We're reinvesting in the library. We're in the process of building an ice arena. Those are all steps on the path to creating Keene as the best city in America. I'm not suggesting that we're going to reach that goal today, tomorrow, or the next day. The goal is still 2028, and the path that we are following is a path that will lead us there. We are addressing the heroin epidemic. We are addressing many of the issues that in fact face this city, and we will continue to address those. We want to make Keene the best city possible to live, to work, to go to school, to raise your family.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, 1 minute.
Yes, I'll take the words right out of the master plan. Of all the new jobs created in 2002, retail jobs have been the greatest increase, primarily due to the open of Monadnock Marketplace. Most of these jobs provide a modest wage and limited benefit and little chance for advancement. Low wage scales retail job makes living in Keene difficult due to how high housing costs. The point to me is, you can have the best ice rink, you can have the best trail system, you can have the best open spaces. If I can't live in Keene, I can't get a job, and I can't get promoted, I don't have enough money to use those. And so if we want to go to 2028, we got to hit this issue that was labeled in 2008 in the master plan.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, obviously the city has taken a public relations hit with the national attention given to student unrest during the Pumpkin Festival weekend and its subsequent fallout. What thoughts do you have about repairing Keene's image outside of Cheshire County, and do you see that as necessary?
I see it as extremely necessary. I think the city of Keene and the Keene State College have to form a marriage. In a marriage, everything doesn't go perfectly, but hopefully it benefits both. I've graduated from Keene State College twice. I'm part of the Keene State Hall of Fame. When someone asks me where I graduate, I want to be proud when I say I graduated from Keene State College. As such, if people, going to Keene State College is a privilege. If you can't maintain that privilege with dignity, you should be gone, because Keene State College has 400 less people. That's going to be about $2 million less in economic impact for Keene because of empty houses. Keene State College needs those people. We need their economic impact. We have to work together. There's no ifs, ands, about it, buts about it. Neither one can survive without the other.
Mr. Lane, 1 minute.
Thank you. The riots that occurred last year in October were not the result of Keene State College. They were not the result of any efforts at Keene State College. Keene State College did not give permits for any events that took place then. Keene State College was simply the unfortunate victim of the location or close to the location where many of those riots took place. In fact, since Dr. Ann Hewitt became president of Keene State, she and I have set up the College City Commission, which has been working hard on the issue of student citizenship, and in fact has just come out with some recommendations to deal with student citizenship and a recognition that the entire city of Keene is the campus for students, not just that small area where Keene State is located. As we go forward, Keene State and the city of Keene are working together to try to deal both with difficulties that we both face, as well as some of the positive things, some of the economic impacts, some of the social impacts that are really positive and strong for this city. That's the image that this city will give out in the future. That's what we will be going forward with.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a follow-up question for you, Mr. Roberts. So how does this repairing effort take place? Could you outline a couple of steps that the city can take to begin to mend its image? Does it hire a public relations firm? As maybe a cheesy example, but do you have specifics?
No, I don't believe you have to hire a public relation firm. I think last time I was looking at it, there's about 6,500 Keene State alumni in the area. They have to get together because, hey, we graduated from Keene State College. We want to be proud of it. They can work with the college, get more into college events, and then they can go as adults, then go and say, hey, I went to Keene State College. This is what we're doing to fix the problem. And yeah, it happened. It was bad. We don't want Keene to be known as a pie school like Plymouth State did. They fixed their problem. We can fix ours.
Mr. Lane, you have 60 seconds if you so choose.
Thank you. The relationship between Keene State College and the city of Keene has both parties dependent upon each other. As we go forward, it will not be a public relations effort. It will, in fact, be a factual effort. It will be a legitimate effort that both parties make working together. One of the things that we're doing and we're looking forward to is there are a number of jobs in this city that are going unfilled right now. We're going to be working with Keene State to figure out how do we get the jobs connected with programs at Keene State so that as students graduate from Keene State, they are in fact able to and qualified to fill particularly some of the precision instrument jobs that are available here in Keene. And that's what's really going to improve the image and improve that relationship between Keene State and the city of Keene.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, it's expensive to be a senior citizen living in Keene, and seniors learned last week that they're not going to be getting the increase in Social Security check that they receive in 2016. About 279,000 people in New Hampshire collect this benefit, and it is just the second time since 2010 that the recipients won't get a cost of living adjustment. Can we be doing more to help our seniors, many of whom have played roles in making this community what it is?
Clearly, there is a problem out there. New Hampshire has the highest percentage of baby boomers in the nation. The Monadnock region has the highest percentage of baby boomers in New Hampshire. It's a problem. It's a problem we have to deal with constantly. We need to find ways. For example, the nursing home at Maplewood, the county nursing home. That needs to be upgraded. That needs to be made available for 21st century. The assistance that we give to the elderly right now, there are a number of programs, but there are also ways in which taxes for the elderly are cut. There are a number of programs, and Keene, in fact, has adopted the maximum amount of relief that the state will allow us for reducing the taxes for the elderly. We work very closely with elderly who have problems with their housing, who have problems paying their taxes, to make sure that, in fact, they can remain in their house and they are not evicted. So that clearly, as we have an aging population, as we need to work closely with the elderly, we continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, 1 minute.
Right now in Keene, we have over 500 elderly people, 65 and older, that live within 150% below of the poverty level. Last year I had an unfortunate medical incident that put me in a nursing home for 4 months. And I told myself I'd never want to be in a nursing home. In certain ways, we don't take care of our elderly. If we're going to do something, we need to have more assisted living. We need to get with the state and allow the elderly to live with dignity in their own homes. As far as reducing the cost to them, I don't see how we can do it without state and federal help.
I'd like to. Some seniors are losing their homes. Do you support a possible sales or income tax or any other form of revenue to prevent this from happening?
If you look at it and you read the rules, elderly don't have to lose their homes. They can keep their home, but the taxes keep building up. And then when they pass on or someone moves out, then they sell the house, and then the city is the first lien on that house to get the taxes. We want to keep people in their home. It is cheaper to keep them in the home than put them in a nursing home.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, you have 60 seconds if you so choose.
Mr. Roberts is absolutely correct. There are programs in this state that allow the elderly to remain in their homes. Never should an elderly person lose their home or be forced to move out of their home. There are programs that the city works with the elderly on. In fact, each year we review all the instances that exist of people who are in fact at risk of losing their homes as a result of non-payment of taxes, and we work with them to make sure that in fact any program that may be available becomes available to them, and we work with them to get them into those programs. I've worked on several cases with the city where we have in fact been able to keep elderly in their homes that otherwise, because they were programs they simply didn't know about, and we were able to get them into the programs.
May I follow up one more
Sure,
time?
sure.
The question really relates more to broad-based tax and whether or not we can offset some of these other taxes and costs for senior citizens and others facing financial difficulty. So where do you stand on a broad-based tax, either sales or income or some other?
Without getting into the specific nature of another tax system, I think that a restructuring of the tax system in the state of New Hampshire is vital at some point. I think we need to think seriously about alternative sources of revenue, alternative ways to raise taxes. The heavy reliance on the property tax is very burdensome. But I also want to point out that I think everybody needs to realize other states that have put in broad-based taxes have not been able to reduce their real estate taxes. That in fact, if you go to New York, if you go to New Jersey, if you go to Connecticut, if you go to a number of other states in the Northeast, you'll find that not only do they have income taxes and they have sales taxes, but they also have very high real estate taxes. That the idea that simply creating a new tax is going to reduce real estate taxes is probably not necessarily true. That in fact there has to be a restructuring of the entire tax system.
Mr. Roberts, so would you back a state income tax or sales tax to offset this burden for seniors?
First, I would not take the tax pledge. Second, in my second term, I got with Mr. Peterson, Representative Peterson's, Governor Peterson's, I think it's son or grandson, And we've tried to get past the Homestead Act that would allow young couples to be able to get a bigger break on their houses, because we wanted younger people in the state of New Hampshire. And right now, that age group between 25 to 39 that was so critical to the growth of Keene, we have gone over the last 5 years, we're down 14%. That's why we have so many houses for sale. And the easiest way to get it through is get a Homestead Act where we have it for elderly. We need to have some type of Homestead Act for younger working class individuals.
Thank you. This next question is for you, Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, Brattleboro and Northampton, Mass. are two examples of vibrant downtowns reflecting a mixture of primarily retail businesses. Does downtown Keene have enough retail presence? Should there be a moratorium on the number of bars on Main Street or on offices?
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. Is when you walk downtown, when you walk from my house on Grove Street to downtown, if I want to get a drink or there's no problem at all. I think we have one that was selling questionable adult material on whether it's smoking or spice or whatever. We need to have more quality restaurants downtown. We need to have more quality stores like Miranda Veranda and some of the other ones, so people from New York come in and buy those expensive items. We have a great hotel system. People from New York think it's really cheap to spend a night in Keene for less than $200. Well, the bars are not going to attract them. The pizza is not going to attract them. They have money, they want to spend money. They're spending it in Northampton. I've been down there. They're spending it in Brattleboro. We need that kind of stuff in Keene. And my wife likes to spend a lot of money in some of those old resale shops.
Mr. Lane, 1 minute.
Thank you. It would be highly desirable to increase the quality of the stores downtown. Miller Brothers is probably the oldest store downtown, but the stores downtown are really determined by the market. They're determined by where the demand is. And the demand, unfortunately, is for pizza shops and bars. I strongly advocate for people in Keene to buy locally. I strongly advocate that if we want to improve the quality of the stores downtown, that they should in fact shop in the stores downtown, not shop online, not go to Manchester or Ingleside, but come downtown in Keene. And if you go shopping in the stores downtown in Keene, we will in fact get higher quality stores.
Thank you. This next question goes to Mr. Lane, and it comes from Keene resident Steve Lindsay, who asks, Mr. Lane, relative to the future of the Faulkner and Colony Dam in Ashwillet River Park, should it be removed for safety and environmental reasons? Should it be repaired as a historic structure and central water feature of the park? And should the dam be preserved, but a sluiceway be built to the north and opened at night to allow the travel of river-run fish, but stay closed during the day for the waterfall?
First off, the dam absolutely should remain. The dam should not be taken down. That taking down the dam actually would have a very negative impact upstream because it would reduce the water table, it would reduce the areas upstream where we have substantial wildlife, where we have substantial amount of conservation land. So removing the dam would be a terrible mistake. We in fact are working with a group and have been now for the last couple of years to generate some hydroelectric power as a demonstration project from that dam. That has been moving slowly simply because the permitting process is incredibly complex. However, saving that dam, maintaining that dam, keeping that dam is critical to that area.
Thank you. Your response, Mr. Roberts?
Yes, one thing about the dam, I think we have an endangered species, one of those little mussels there. Yes, I think it needs a big combination. I think we should have a fish run as more and more dams all the way out to Long Island Sound are being removed. I think we can have it both ways. I think that's a critical historical part of the city. When people go there, even now, fall foliage, of course, when it's a little bit warmer, they go there, they take their pictures, they like the blue heron that hangs down there. And it's a great place. I would never even think of taking that dam out.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, this next question is for you.
Mr. Roberts, do you believe that city and school spending in Keene can be coordinated in any way to benefit Keene property taxpayers? If so, please describe how.
Right now, the city and the school are working together, and they're finding ways, buying janitorial supplies and other housekeeping supplies. Like I said, they're working, and because both the city and the school board realize there's very limited tax money, and they have to prove to the taxpayers they're using it judicially.
Mr. Lane, your response?
The joint purchasing program is something that has been established over the last few years between Keene School District and the City of Keene. But also Keene State has participated in that, and the county has participated in that. And it's not only the purchase of janitorial supplies, it also has involved the purchase of fuel oil, it has involved the purchase or a number of services, of shared services, shared use of equipment. So there have been a fairly substantial amount of savings that actually has been generated to the taxpayers in Keene by the cooperation that exists in the joint purchasing agreement.
A quick follow-up to that, do you have a sense of how much savings we've seen so far? And, in addition, are there any plans in the future for more programs that might help taxpayers?
There actually are plans for expanding the program. We've been looking at sharing personnel in some areas, that there is some duplication between some of the personnel that the city is involved with and some of the personnel that the school district has, and we have had some discussions with them to try to figure out if there is a way, in fact, that we can share those personnel to further cut costs.
And the specific savings, do you know? Not to put you on the spot.
I have no idea what the numbers are.
Okay.
I didn't bring the numbers with me.
Thank you. This next question is for Mr. Lane.
What role can the city play in making this a more culturally and racially diverse community?
The need to make this a more diverse community is critical to our future. Businesses right now, CNS, Smith's, Timken, many of the people that they are recruiting are in fact come from a different culture, come from a different background. The need of this city, and that's something that I've been talking about for some time now in a variety of groups, about the need to make this a more welcoming community for diverse cultures. One of the things that in fact we're currently working on, I have set up a committee that is developing the parameters for a new fall festival. And the theme of that new fall festival will be diversity. And it will be to show the diversity that currently exists and the opportunities that we have in this community to make this a more culturally diverse community.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, 1 minute.
The cultural diversity of Keene has been changing. In 1972, when I came to Keene State College, there was less than 10 people of color, and most of them were all on sports teams. Barbara Trumley used to be the principal of Franklin School. I talked to her a couple of years ago. For the first time, a couple of years ago, we didn't have to use all white kids made up to take care of all the countries. She finally had enough people from the right countries when they had their international day. Last year on the school board, it was amazing. A little bit more than 17% of the elementary school kids are non-white. So there are a lot of people coming into Keene. Keene's diversity is changing, and Keene has been pretty welcoming to most of the people. I haven't seen any graffiti, any racist graffiti, any anti-Semitist graffiti. It's pretty clean in Keene.
Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, are there any particular services that the city is not currently offering the public that you would add? Are there any current services to the public that you would discontinue?
I think I would like to have more support to the senior center, because we had to fight to give them about $6,000, $7,000 extra, maybe a little bit more this year. But seniors have to have a place to go during the daytime. They have to go and have meals. Castle Center does a really good job. Meals on Wheels is extremely important, because sometimes that is the only time anybody sees a senior during the course of the day, and in a number of cases, their visit has been life-saving. What services would I like to give up? I'll be a little biased from as a little kid, but I heard that you get in trouble. I would like to give up the leaf pickup. That's almost $100,000. But as a 10-year-old kid, I made a lot of money raking leaves. And so if I had my choice, I would spend that $100,000 to improve the quality of life of our elderly people, especially when we have so many that are just above the poverty line, and allow some kids, 10, 12-year-old kids, to make some money on the side.
Thank you. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. We actually, and Mr. Roberts has talked about the Senior Citizen Center, which was actually a very good example to talk about, because we are in fact negotiating right now between the Senior Citizen Center and the Recreation Department for the City of Keene to in fact relocate the Senior Citizen Center into the Recreation Department and provide expanded facilities for the elderly, expanded opportunities for the elderly, and integrate those opportunities into the programs at the Recreation Department. As far as cutting any programs, that cutting the leaf pickup would be a nice idea. I would favor it. I think the leaf pickup is a real problem as far as the equipment is concerned, as far as the manpower is concerned. We do it because we're trying to clean out the storm drains before winter, so to try to alleviate some of the winter flooding. But certainly, if there was an alternative way to get the leaves picked up, that would be a good program to discontinue.
Thank you. So we have consensus on the leaf collection program. Good.
Perhaps not in the community, though.
Job loss there, young job loss. This next question is for you, Mr. Lane, and it comes from Keene resident Karen McDonough, who asks, there are jobs to fill but no one to fill them, and skilled workers are leaving the workplace, but there are not enough qualified people to replace them. Job loss in the area is greater than job growth, and if there is any job growth, it's in the service industry, which doesn't pay a living wage. What specifically will you do, if elected mayor, to recruit new companies, including manufacturers, to the region, and in what time frame do you expect results from your efforts?
The opportunity to recruit new companies, and perhaps even more importantly, to work with existing companies to help them expand, to help them grow, to help them prosper, is something that I've spent the last 4 years working on. The premise of the question is absolutely correct, that in fact there are jobs right now that are unfilled, and they're unfilled because we don't have the qualified workforce in Keene to fill those jobs. Part of what we need to do is number one, we need to work with the college, with Antioch, with River Valley, to in fact make sure that the graduates that are leaving those schools are in fact qualified to fill the available jobs that we have here. During the time that I've been mayor, I've spent a lot of time going around and meeting with various employers in the city. I've reinvigorated the President's Court, which is an opportunity to bring all the major employers in the city together in a single forum. And we have, during that period of time, had extensive discussions about recruiting of employment to come in here, but also home growing the people and encourage them to stay here and provide jobs and opportunities for them. So that's really what the future holds. As far as bringing new companies in here, we're looking at the corridor on the east side of Main Street. that the Kingsbury property presents some opportunities for space where we could land a new company. We've also had some discussions with some companies about the property down on Lower Main Street behind Cheshire Tire, the old landfill. Unfortunately, beyond that, we don't have a lot of space. We had the opportunity to bring in a 300,000 square foot company a couple of years ago. We couldn't do it because we didn't have any space where they could go.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, 1 minute.
Again, from the master plan from 2008, it said there is a good chance that large employees may locate outside the city limit. So we knew 7 or 8 years ago there was a possibility if we were bringing new people in, new companies, they were going to maybe go to a place like Swansea's Enterprise Zone or maybe Winchester where they're looking forward. I think the real big key is we need workforce housing. And so if the people go to Swansea and get a really good wage, they come back to Keene, raise their families in Keene, buy in Keene. Right now, we have it the opposite way. A lot of people are coming outside of Keene, into Keene, getting high quality jobs and taking their money out of Keene. So to me, it doesn't matter where they locate. Yes, it would help with taxes, but we got to set up a place so people would want to live in Keene and can afford to live in Keene.
So I have a follow-up question for you first, Mr. Lane, and Mr. Roberts, you have a chance to answer it too. I remember doing an interview or a feature story on Whitney Brothers, the business in Keene, a couple of years ago for our Economic Outlook. And they had a lone worker running a CAD program in the corner. And they were downright giddy that this was a worker who'd come out of a program at Keene State. They had actually married up an academic program with their particular industry. It's so easy for all of this to get lost in all of the things that we do, but how do we keep our eye on that ball and accelerate that effort of marrying up those programs with the manufacturing and industry we have in Keene so that we just don't continue to lose and we're constantly fighting to keep up?
The Chamber and the college and the school district are working together on regional manufacturing program to in fact marry up those jobs and to ensure that those jobs are in fact being able to be filled by the people that are graduating from Keene State. But we need to go beyond that. We really need to, and that's one of the subjects that the College City Commission is, in fact, I'm going to be encouraging them to work on, is how do we expand those opportunities for Keene State graduates to, in fact, get local jobs.
Mr. Roberts, would you like to respond?
My thing is, I would go towards the German model. We have to get with the school system, high school, college, and the companies and say, okay, Whitney Brothers says, I have a CAD employee. That individual is going to retire in 5 years. Do we go to the college and the freshman and the individual says, yes, I want to do it. So he does paid internship at the same time, which is allowing the company to be able to actually give on-the-spot job interview. And so as the individual goes and says, wow, I'm going to be able to get a job as soon as I graduate. And the company says, if you stay and get here, we'll send you on to furthermore college and make you even more valuable. So that's how you work it together.
Thank you. This next question is for you, Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, in your opinion, what infrastructure weaknesses need the most attention in Keene? A particular road, a particular bridge, or an entire area?
A lot of our roads need a lot of work the past couple of years because of the big storms. They've been torn up. Matter of fact, I think we put a bunch of money extra into the budget this year to repair roads, and that needs to happen. The state doesn't give us money. With the federal government, the gas tax, they don't pass. We don't know if we can do a project here or there. And so we're stuck. We may have 20% of the money, but the state's not going to give us the 80%. But the roads around Keene have to be repaired. We're doing a great job on Grove Street and Water Street, Washington, and Court. We're working on Island Street. But it's all these small seats that are really irritating the individuals. And they see the North Street Bridge and they read on the front page, we're going to start the South Street Bridge, the South Bridge next year. And they're saying is, why does my road have potholes?
Thank you. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. The intersection that probably is the most dangerous in the city of Keene and which needs work first is the intersection of Base Hill Road and Route 9. There have been a number of fatalities at that intersection, that there is a lot of high-speed traffic that comes down Route 9 going through that intersection, and the need for the safety improvements to take place at that intersection is critical. Beyond that, and the state, in fact, we understand that in the spring, the state, in fact, will be working on that intersection. As far as the city is concerned, though, we need to replicate the program that we did on the small streets between Washington Street and Court Street, where we upgraded the streets, we did the roads, we did the sidewalks, we did the water, we did the sewer. Once we did that work, in fact, people have been reinvesting in those neighborhoods. We need to do the same thing on the east side of Keene. We need to do the same thing on lower parts of Water Street and Church Street, South Lincoln Street, and some of the streets on the east, Beavis Street, Brook Street, the streets on the east side of Keene. We need to upgrade those streets, and then we will have people living in those areas rather than college students.
Thank you. Thank you. This next
quick
question.
follow-up?
Next, yes.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up to both of you. You both mentioned that there are streets that need to be fixed and infrastructure that needs to be fixed. Do you have a sense of where the money would come from that? And if you're paying for that, does it have to come from someplace else?
If it's water and sewage, those are user fees. Those are, I think it's enterprise fund do it, so they actually pay for themselves. Like I said before, and the city sometimes works with the state and the federal government, but then we also have local streets that we have to pay for ourselves.
We spend about $1 million a year on local streets, and the money would come out of that $1 million. I believe that the next focus for that $1 million should be on the streets on the east side of Keene, that we need to upgrade those neighborhoods, that as college students move closer to campus, we need to upgrade those areas so that there will be reinvestment in the homes, and those homes will become available for workforce housing.
Thank you. Next question for Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, it's possible that many people in Keene aren't fully aware of or don't understand the concept of the fish farm and greenhouse project near the landfill on Route 12. Construction is due to start in the spring. How will this benefit residents of Keene, and what are your views of the project, and are there any risks to the taxpayers?
The project is an incredibly innovative project. It is a project that will use methane gas from the landfill, something that in large measure goes to waste now, to create heat and energy that will circulate the water so that tilapia can be grown in the water, and then the waste product from the tilapia will then be used to grow vegetables in a greenhouse. As far as the risk to the taxpayers, there really isn't any risk to the taxpayers. That the city is in fact doing some investment in the landfill that has to be done anyway. We are working on the road. Anybody that's been to the landfill recently will know that the road into the landfill is in pretty sad shape, and that needs to be upgraded. Also, the three-phase power, which we are required to upgrade anyway, that's going to be done. The benefit to the taxpayer is going to be jobs. It's going to be an increased tax base. This operation will in fact pay taxes to the city of Keene. It will in fact provide jobs to people in the city of Keene, and I think that it is in fact a project that needs to go forward. There's been a lot of controversy that the management, or some of the management that's currently involved in it, was previously involved in a project in Brattleboro that was not successful for a variety of reasons. That was a very different project. The issues that existed in Brattleboro do not exist here. That in fact the investment into the project is very different here than it was in Brattleboro, so that we're unlikely to have the same types of problems here that Brattleboro had.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, 1 minute.
Yes, as Mia said, the infrastructure improvements and three-phase power, they were in the capital improvement program, but they're just being moved forward to match up the fish farm. So, but the fish farm, my concern about the fish farm is like when we had a grant to do the E.F. Lane Hotel when they said we were going to get 25 well-paying jobs. Well, we got 25 jobs, but they weren't exactly well-paying. But the overall benefit to the local area is that the produce and the fish will be sold to local schools and local food co-ops and everything, reducing the greenhouse effect of having to bring trucks into the Keene area.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to limit the follow-up questions. We're almost an hour into this great discussion, and we're only on page 5 of 9 pages of some really good questions. So, Mr. Roberts, this next question is yours.
Mr. Roberts, do you support raising parking meter rates and lot fees in downtown Keene?
Yes. The reason being is right now, we haven't done a really good job of maintaining it. Like, for example, Commercial Street parking lot right now, this is our bus, doesn't have any meters. We're losing money since the parking lot came open. We should have been making money, collecting money since that period, but we haven't. And if we want to have a sustainable parking future, yes, we have to do it, or we have to make up the difference in taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. The answer is also yes, that the parking fund is a user fee. It's a user fee on those people that bring their cars into downtown, that bring their cars into those areas where in fact we have parking meters. Somebody has to pay to take care of those parking lots. Somebody had to pay to take care of the Commercial Street parking lot. Somebody has to pay to take care of the Wells Street parking lot. Those aren't free. And rather than putting it on the backs of the real estate taxpayers, we've created a enterprise fund called the Parking Fund, which is a user fee, so that those people that use the facility, in fact, pay for the cost of maintaining it.
Thank you. We're going to get just the one time in the debate that will fall out of sequence here. This first question is going to go back to you again, Mr. Roberts, because it's from a Keene resident, Mr. Tom Spinks, and is directed specifically to you. Mr. Roberts, if elected mayor, what kind of changes would you like to see with Keene's city council system, the way it is currently run? And please elaborate on your position regarding this topic.
The Keene City Council system is extremely good. The big thing is, which person do you put on which committee? My first priority, if elected mayor, would be putting each individual on the committee that best serves the community, not their own interest. And I'm not saying everybody likes to do something they're more familiar with, but that would be my biggest thing. And the second thing is I would work that the city council get more involved, get out and talk to the individuals, because people don't think that the city government listens.
Thank you. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. Our system of government, we have a partnership between the city manager, the city council, and the mayor. The three of them work together hand in hand. The city council has the responsibility for developing policies in this city based upon the critical information that is provided them by the city manager. The mayor has the responsibility of going out to the public and letting the public know what the decisions are, how the decisions were arrived at, what it means for them, and to take feedback from the members of the public so that that can come back to the city council and come back to the city manager as they implement the policies. We have a very good system here. We have a system that is very transparent. We have a system that in fact allows, we have one of the largest city councils in New England, and 15 people for fairly small districts. The opportunity for somebody to interact with their city councilor or with their mayor is better than it is in almost any other community in New England.
Thank
so
you.
We're very fortunate.
Thank you. This next question is for you, Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, an immediate priority for the city is the hiring of a new city manager. It's been 20 years since the city has had to fill this position. List 3 essential qualities that you would want to see in the next city manager.
We are currently in the process of hiring a new city manager. There are a number of criteria that we will be looking at in order to do that. We expect the new city manager to have 10 years of experience as a city manager in other communities. We expect them to have a master's degree. We expect them, quite frankly, we expect them to live in Keene. That's been a major issue for some possible candidates as to whether they want to live in Keene or not, and we feel that that's very important. We want them to have some experience in a town that has a college population, that in fact the relationship between the city of Keene and Keene State College is something that is critical for the future of this community, but also would be critical for any incoming city manager. And we expect them to have experience in developing public-private projects, because most projects that take place in the city of Keene are a combination of public involvement and private involvement. And so we would hope that the new city manager would have some experience in putting those kinds of projects together. We are looking forward to beginning the first round of interviews within the next week, and we hope that by the end of this year that we have a successful candidate for city manager.
Your response, Mr. Roberts?
Yes, my first one, this is the Marine in me, is I would like to have a city manager as a proven track record of success and who is not satisfied where he or she is right now and want to continue to improve. Second is, does the person have a proven record of making their subordinates into leaders? Because to me, a good leader should train themselves out of a job. Three, it is not important to me that the person be a former city manager, has 10 years, because you might have someone from Boston who's been an assistant city manager and says, it's been tough, I would like to raise my family in a small New England town. Do we throw that person and say, sorry, you're not even considered because you've only worked in Boston as a assistant city manager for 10 years? I really don't want to put limitations going forward. I would like to see what the pool would give, but my biggest thing is, are you getting better?
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, you get the next question.
The city government has spent much time and money dealing with libertarian activists connected to the Free State Project. Is there a way forward in dealing with them that would minimize the cost to taxpayers without infringing on free speech rights?
It's one of those, both sides have to treat each other with respect. We may go in city government and say we don't like them, or we may say some of them is acting childish, but you know what? We're in the United States, everybody has their right, and not everybody is going to act like an adult. If someone is not acting like an adult and you treat them like a child, it's always going to get worse. A good example was the last debate we had on Cheshire TV. They really put on a well-qualified, well-run debate. That same individual is giving all city council candidates the opportunity for a 5-minute interview. So they're not all the same. The idea is treat people with respect, treat them as individuals, and like they say, you expect a lot out of them, you normally will get a lot out of them.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, 1 minute.
Thank you. I think that Mr. Roberts is absolutely correct, that in fact you need to treat them as individuals. You don't treat them as a group. Don't look at the group and think that just because they have ideas that are different than yours, that somehow makes them unsuitable to be residents of Keene. That in fact there is a lot of opportunities for them to contribute to the community, and I frequently have seen them contributing to the community. That there is a lot of value in them. However, when the issue becomes protecting public employees, we need to step forward and protect our employees. It's only in the extreme cases, however, that in fact we need to react to what they do.
Thank you. This next question is for Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, do you worry about the appearance of impropriety regarding the development of property owned by you for a senior citizen complex outside of the city? Keene's master plan calls for development of a centrally located facility for sustainability reasons and also to keep downtown services and culture accessible to senior citizens. Should a sitting mayor be involved in and profit from this kind of development project?
First off, I'm not involved in that kind of development project in any way. I have a piece of land. I've signed an agreement to sell that piece of land. those people at Prospect Place that are moving forward with this development are making the decisions as to how they want to put that project together. I have recused myself from any involvement in this project. I have not been involved in any part of this project. Quite frankly, as it goes through the regulatory process, I think the people that serve on the regulatory boards are totally qualified to make the decision for themselves, whether they feel they have a conflict of interest. If they do, they would recuse themselves. If they do not feel that way, they will go forward with the regulatory process. But as far as my involvement in it is concerned, I have none.
Mr. Roberts, do you wish to respond?
I think it may be an unfair response, but as a Marine Corps officer, I was brought up, if it's illegal, if it's immoral, it's unethical, and people perceive it's wrong, it's wrong.
Thank you. This question goes to you, Mr. Roberts, and it comes from Keene resident David Wally. He asks, Keene is not growing economically at any kind of consistent or robust pace. There is no denying that we need more young families, children, businesses, and good jobs. We can't rely on the colleges, the hospital, or the few anchor businesses we have here for tax revenue and job growth. We need to see growth in real brick and mortar industries, not just service jobs. While Keene is a wonderful place to live, I believe these trends are unhealthy and need to be addressed. What does your view of Keene's economic future look like, and what specific actions will you take to bring new and sustained economic vitality to Keene?
As I stated when I first spoke, to me, Keene's economic future is not very bright. We have to work together. We have to decide if we're going to work with Swansea, like we're trying to do with the airport, and increase the TIF. If Winchester is going to have their economic zone, do we work with them? Because again, in the master plan, it's stated over and over and over again, Keene is the economic driver of Monadnock region. And so I don't see how, the way, like the mayor said, we don't have room to grow a lot of businesses. So we have to look outside it, Keene, we have to view it as an economic, Monadnock economic region, and grow businesses that way and fight for where we're going to get those people to live.
Thank you. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. I think we should realize that the three top employees in the city employ 20% of the workforce. That means 80% of the workforce is hired in small businesses, in commercial enterprises, in retail enterprises. We need to focus on the small businesses, on the incubator industries. We need to foster them, we need to encourage them, we need to support them, and we need to, and they, in fact, will provide the employment in the future.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, there's been a gradual but dramatic shift in the ratio of rental units to family-owned homes in the city, with the increase trending more toward more rental units, many clustered in the same neighborhoods. Is this trend in the best interest of the city? If not, what are some possible responses?
It's not necessarily in the best interests of the city, but it is a nationwide trend that is going on. The home ownership across the country has been declining since 2007, and that the number of rental units has been increasing. What we really need to focus on is how do we make these rental units suitable for young families, for workforce housing, for those people that we want to encourage to come into this city and to live in this city and be able to afford living in this city. I've suggested earlier that one of the major ways that the city, in fact, can impact on this is by improving the infrastructure in those neighborhoods where rental housing has taken place, that we can improve the roads, the sidewalks, the water, the sewer. And by doing that, we will encourage private investment that will, in fact, make these properties more suitable, more attractive for workforce housing and for young families. Also, the parks, Robin Hood Park and Carpenter Field, need to be upgraded. On Thursday, I'm doing we're putting in new playground equipment into Robin Hood Park that, in fact, is being paid for by the neighborhood. And that's part of our investment into these neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Yes, right now in Keene, about 47% of the homes in Keene are now rental property. That compares to about 33 to 35% in New Hampshire. I'll give you an example. I was here about 1 year, and then there was a nice older couple across the street from me. An individual bought the house and says, "You don't have to leave, but the rent is now $2,400 a month." And so that happened over and over around my neighborhood, around Grove Street and Forster Street. So right across the street, there's 7 people paying $650 a month for the house. The college is going to go and wants to get 70% on the college campus. That would free up a lot of houses, but my worry is that a lot of out-of-state slumlords will just abandon those houses, and we'll have some serious problems.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, this next question is for you.
Mr. Roberts, your thoughts on Keene's homeless situation? Are current services adequate? And if not, how would you bolster them?
I don't like to see anybody homeless. We've had a few homeless people pass away during the middle of the winter. We've worked hard with the 100-night shelter, and we've worked with the Southwest got together with 100-night shelter and with the city social services. So if people know the rules, almost everybody can be taken care of. Some of them go to 100-night shelter, and then the next morning they can be brought to Southwest, and some of them are given long-term shelter, some of them short-term shelter. But the biggest problem we had was a lack of communication, and again, we had the 100-night shelter in Southwest fighting against each other over funding. But the city has fixed that problem, rectified that problem, and I think we've got a really good handle on the homeless in Keene. Anybody who is homeless, who wants to have a bed to sleep, can find that bed.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. The issue with homelessness is that, in fact, there are beds available for every single homeless person that wants a bed. There are those who choose not to utilize the shelters. They're not to utilize Southwest Community Services shelters, not to utilize the 100-night shelter. We try to encourage them. We try to bring them in on particularly really cold nights in the winter. We almost force them to come into to one of the shelters. But there are those who really much prefer to not live in one of the shelters. Southwest Community Services actually has a program where if you are in fact in one of their shelters, they will transition you very quickly into permanent housing. So we make a very strong effort to discourage homelessness. We make a very strong effort to make sure that anyone who is homeless has in fact adequate housing.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, a question for you.
Mr. Lane, while you are not officially involved in the schools, what do you think of the quality of a Keene education?
I think the Keene education system is superb. This past year, U.S. News and World Report came out with an evaluation of the schools in every state. New Hampshire, Keene was rated #1 as a Class L school in the state of New Hampshire. We were the highest rated Class L school in New Hampshire. I think the schools are excellent. And I think that the school board has done a superb job of managing the schools, keeping the costs down, trying to find new and innovative ways to reduce the costs in the school district, but in the meantime, providing a high-quality education in Keene.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
I'll thank the mayor for that compliment.
You're welcome.
But yes, Keene schools are very good, but we have challenges. Right now, being very good is not good enough in the new 21st century world. Keene has to keep getting better, because if you're not getting better, you're falling behind. I know that's an old cliche, but we have to keep getting better. We have to ensure that every student who is willing to work will graduate at a high level.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, another question from an area resident. Stephanie Scher asks, the Cheshire County Commissioners in the 17 towns along the proposed Ned pipeline route are opposed to the frack gas pipeline coming through southern New Hampshire. Will you join the Cheshire County towns of Winchester, Richmond, Fitzwilliam, Troy, Rindge, and New Ipswich? Keene and Swansea are now also affected potentially, in opposition to the pipeline and the newly proposed Keene lateral and extension of the pipeline?
No, and the reason being is one of the problems with Keene, we have super high energy costs, we have high water and sewage costs, we have high taxes. We have one of the ways of making ourselves more competitive is to find alternate ways of getting energy. And if it can be done safely and it can be done productively to the city of Keene, I would be open to that.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, your response?
Thank you. The Kinder Morgan pipeline that's currently being proposed through southern New Hampshire is currently being reviewed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Agency, FERC. I think that FERC, in their process of reviewing that, needs to listen to and pay attention to those local communities that are directly affected by the Kinder Morgan proposal. And I think that the regulatory process needs to go through in its normal course. And then they need to make the decision as to whether, in fact, that pipeline is needed and appropriate and should, in fact, be built in those towns that are affected by it.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, you get this next question.
Mr. Lane, Keene has long been viewed as a city with an eye toward green initiatives and strong environmental stewardship. A zero-waste fish and vegetable growing facility at the landfill is likely sometime soon, but there seems to be less discussion and fewer actual projects on the drawing board. Is the city doing enough these days on environmental issues?
I had the opportunity in January to go down to Washington, D.C. to speak to a group of mayors from across the country. What I was speaking about was the sustainability efforts of the city of Keene. I was amazed. Cities across the country are watching the city of Keene because we are on the cutting edge of the sustainability efforts across the country in trying to develop our community in a green fashion. There are a number of projects that are ongoing. One of them, which I mentioned earlier on, was to redraft all of the land use codes in the city of Keene to be compliant with the comprehensive master plan, which is in fact probably one of the most advanced master plans in the country, something that the cities across the country are emulating because it advocates sustainability in every portion of our community. That we've just recently are exploring a biomass district heating generation and distribution plant at 560 Main Street. We are looking at
Mr. Lane, I'm going to 10 more seconds if you can wrap it up. We got 10 minutes left in the debate.
There are a number of projects ongoing. There are a number of projects which we are looking at to make Keene even more sustainable.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, 1 minute.
Yes, we talk about making Keene green, and we're working towards open spaces, working towards making Keene green, but we're not looking at the number one polluter in Keene. According to the U.S. Census, 80% of people in Keene, workers in Keene, drive themselves to work every day alone. 10% of the people live at home, work at home, so they don't have to drive. Only about 1% ride their bike and about 2% walk. Basically, the biggest effect in reducing greenhouses is getting that number from 80% down to a much lower number.
Thank you. We prearranged for a 90-minute debate, and we're going to stick to that. So in the final 10 minutes here, we're going to try to get through a couple of more questions, and then we'll get to closing comments. This next question is for you, Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts, do you support stronger enforcement of current city codes in regards to absent and neglectful landlords housing off-campus students?
Without a doubt, because if we don't fix them, we run the risk of, like Kent State had a few years ago, off-campus housing in dead students. We don't want dead students. We don't want anybody dead from unsafe houses.
Thank you. Mr. Lane?
The answer is yes. One of the recommendations that came out of the College City Commission was that, in fact, we had one full-time and one part-time housing officer. They recommended increasing that to 2 full-time housing officers. So we're taking a close look at that. Another recommendation was that we have 1 police officer who is the college liaison. They recommended increasing that to 2 police officers who do act as college liaison. The answer is yes. We feel that working with the landlords, working with the residents, working with the students is an absolute necessity to improving the quality of life in neighborhoods on the east side of Keene, which are majority students.
Thank you. This question is for you, Mr. Lane.
Mr. Lane, is the City of Keene doing enough to combat crime? If not, what more might it be doing?
The answer is we are doing a great deal to combat crime. I think that the police department does a fantastic job. That last Friday they received the Congressional Award at the Police Standards and Training Academy for the work that they had done during the riots last October. I can't say enough positive about the Keene Police Department. That in fact, during the recession, when other departments were cut back in the number of personnel, we didn't cut back the police department, and we didn't cut back the fire department, because public safety is vital. That is probably the #1 job of the community, and we work hard to make sure that they have the resources that they need, and we support them, and they take care of us.
Thank you. Your response, Mr. Roberts?
Yes, they're doing a great job combating crime, but the problem is we're not doing enough to prevent crime. The 2 biggest causes of crime in Keene right now are people committing crime to pay for their drug addiction and underage drinking in Keene. We still have too many places selling alcohol to underage drinking. So if we take care of the work on the drug problem and work on underage drinking, then the police won't have to arrest as many people.
Thank you. So I'm going to end the question phase of the debate there, and we'll do closing remarks, and that'll, I think, allow us to finish up pretty close on time. Again, this was determined before the debate by way of a coin flip, and so Mr. Lane, you will go first. You have 2 minutes for closing comments.
To you. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate the fact that this evening you had the opportunity to listen to my opponent and listen to me. As I have spoken about the city, about my vision for the future, and my desire to work with the City Council and with the incoming city manager, you have had the opportunity to think about the future you want for Keene. The choice is going to be yours on November 3rd. This election is not about me. It's not about my opponent. It's about the community. It's what the community wants for the future. Over 2,000 people within our community work together to develop our community goals. They are based upon creating a sustainable community that is economically, environmentally, and socially healthy and resilient. The goal, perhaps, is less important than the path we follow to get there. As I ask you to consider your vote on November 3rd, I want you to consider which path you want the city to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, 2 minutes.
Yes, I thank you for this opportunity, and I want everybody to know that I have the highest regard and respect for Mayor Lane. It's just that I think I can do a better job going forward. He talked about the path. I look at the path we've been on the last 4 to 8 years, and I don't think that's the same path that we need to go on now. Times have changed. It was a good path when it was 4 years ago. It was a good path 8 years ago. But times have been changing. I have nothing against Keene State College. I believe that Keene State College and the city has to work together. And like I said earlier, I want to be proud when someone asks me, what college did you go to? But my thing is, I think in the leadership role, we have to change. I think the city council fell off its responsibility over the years. I view the mayor and the city council as the board of directors. We get together, we decide what the priorities are, and we give them to the city manager, who is the CEO. We don't get in his or her business, and we allow them to do the best job possible. That's how you work together. And again, like I said, I wouldn't be running for mayor if I was unwilling to work for a solution. I like to work with people. I like to get things done. I don't like to place blame. And I know as a city, we can do better. We have to do better. And this election is about everyone who works in the city, lives in the city. We have to give everybody a better standard of living in Keene.
Thank you. So that's a wrap. I'd like to thank each of the candidates for making themselves available tonight. This is not easy to do. I thought it was an instructive and informative night, and I hope that all of you who turned out felt the same. Thank you, too, for your civic involvement. At this time, I'd like to give a round of applause to both candidates from everybody, please. I would also like to extend a final thank you to our panelists who volunteered for this work tonight, for taking a weeknight off to do this. A couple of other quick thank yous, of course, to the staff of the Colonial Theater. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to bring you even a simple event such as this. They're great people and easy people to work with. I'd like to thank Keene State College for the donation of the podiums. We had the darndest time trying to find 3 podiums for a debate. And also to a couple of people at the Sentinel, Kevin Pearson, Angela Ruest, and that's it, for some of the behind-the-scenes work that they were involved in tonight. Lastly, just to tell everybody to have a great night and make sure you get to the polls on November 3rd and exercise your right to vote. Thank you.